Thank you. If you could all come in and take your seats, please. We do have a drinks reception at the end of this for you to continue networking, but we need to start on time to be able to get to the drinks reception where you can network. So I need you to sit down. So we're going through these discussions. As we saw in the previous one, we're talking about the role of how we attract crew and how we build up that sort of human element reserve and make the industry look attractive. Now, within that angle, of course, we've got the idea of innovation. So this next panel session that I'm going to moderate is the industry showing enough bravery in embracing innovation and how that fits into what we've been talking about, including, an economic development. We saw this morning from Dag Killen about the economic development. Is the financial uncertainty going to create questions around how we deal with innovation? So please, could I ask my 4 victims lined up there? Frederick Pinn from Njord, Dieter Manhui from EPS Ventures, Dr. Sanjay Kutan from the Global Centre for Maritime Decarbonisation, and Jean Chen from Signal. Thank you. I know who you are. If you need to sit under your photograph as a reminder, it's perfectly okay. It's not alphabetical. Sit where you like. It doesn't matter. But I did notice you all sat as far away from me as you possibly could.
Yes.
Ever. I want to talk about innovation, and I want to put it into the context of how we see the evolution of the industry, because there's 2 elements to that. And one of the elements with you, particularly, Jean, I want to bring in is, because you've worked in a few businesses here in Singapore, I think you're quite familiar with the kind of innovative bubble within Singapore. So I'm going to get you to sort of give some color to what's going on in Singapore. But first, I want to develop this picture about how we look at innovation, whether we invest in innovation in a way that is productive, what fears we've got about innovation. And to put some context to this, there was a Clarkson's report, I think, about Clarkson's DNV report about the amount of innovation, or not innovation, but fuel-saving technologies on ships, and it was low. Like 33% of the ships in the fleet had something retrofitted on them. Now, that's not saying I know that's different to innovation per se, but that's just an example about how reluctant we see the global fleet generally. And let's not forget that large number of owners, the large percentage of ship owners only own about 5 or 15 ships. They're not big ship owners with lots of ships. So I want to have this discussion looking at how we embrace or how we encourage innovation, both from the large owners, EPS Ventures and things like that, and how we then try and encourage the smaller industry players to not be so fearful about it, okay? So I'm going to start with EPS Ventures, because obviously the idea of EPS Ventures, I guess, is to support innovation. Mm-hmm. How do you go about choosing what you consider to be innovation and not a risk?
I think those things come hand in hand, innovation and risk. There's no way around it. Because innovation, by very definition, means somebody's trying out something new. And if you're going to try out something new to think there'll be no downside whatsoever, I think that situation doesn't exist. How do we, and is our role to support innovation? Look, we're primarily investors. That means we invest, and we're not a not-for-profit investor. We invest for a profit. So the first thing we seek when we are looking at any new innovation is whether this will turn a buck or not, to call a spade a spade. But once we invest, of course, we're very supportive, because we want that company to grow and thrive, and that's good for our shareholding in that company. How do we go about identifying what is innovative and what is not innovative? It's funny, we were just talking about this just before we came in. But I think the first thing we look for is this something that is not just an incremental change? Is it something that can create a big difference for the customer that it is targeting? I think if it is not able to create a big difference for the customer, it's not innovative. It's just not interesting. And you said, that Clarkson's has pointed out that only a third of the global fleet or a third of the owners that are out there are using innovative ideas or innovative new technologies, and the rest of the industry isn't. And people need to be less fearful. I really don't think it's about people needing to be less fearful. I just think most of the innovation that the marine world is seeing right now is incremental. It's not that exciting. It's not moving the needle enough. And if you don't move the needle enough, it's not fear that'll stop you. It's being substandard that'll stop the growth of innovation. So I have a slightly different position.
When you say substandard, do you mean that the shipping companies would think that the innovation is substandard?
Yes. As a customer, I mean, I live in Singapore. Lots of innovation has come about in Singapore. I use a ride-sharing app. I buy all my stock online. It's not a Singaporean phenomenon. These are global phenomenon. I order food online. These are all manifestations of innovation. But I participate in those innovations. I'm an ardent user of those innovations because they weren't just incremental change. They created substantial change in my life. The value proposition was significant. And I think every ship owner that's in this room or in the world out there is, at the end of the day, a customer. And unless they gain a significant advantage out of that piece of innovation that's being presented to them, they're not going to adopt it. I think it's less fear. I think it's the fact that the gain from it is incremental and not significant.
But we had a panel earlier where we had the 4 ship owners up here, and you know, they listed why some of those technologies, you know, are not necessarily digital technologies, but some of those technologies like carbon capture and wind are or aren't suitable for them. They see the obstacles clearly in front of them to stop that sort of significant innovation that you're talking about.
Yep.
You know, they don't see the technologies necessarily as innovative. They see it as a problem, and they can identify the problems at the moment they can't resolve.
Sure. I can see that, and I think this is the case in every industry around the world. I don't feel that shipping should unnecessarily be singled out as less innovative or more fearful or more stuck in their ways. I think if you look at the steel industry or the cement industry or the aviation industry, it's not like they are sticking their heads out and paying a 2x green premium or seeing all of their costs go out of whack just for the sake of innovation. I think at the end of the day, it's a capitalist world, unfortunately, that we live in. Fortunately and unfortunately, it's a capitalist world that we live in. And an innovator has to earn their buck by creating a significant enough change in their customers' lives. Otherwise, they're not going to thrive.
And is that part of the problem here, Dr. Kutan, that we have innovation and we have different levels of innovation with different levels of investment? Because we're talking about decarbonisation, and obviously, for a lot of shipping companies, digital solutions are a low level of investment for them, whereas some of these, for sake of a better word, hardcore decarbonisation solutions like wind and carbon capture, much heavier level of investment. Is that why the sort of digital angle is a much easier one to digest?
I think we need to first recognize that the maritime industry is very heterogeneous. So just because you have an innovative idea doesn't mean it's going to be multiplied across 60,000, 80,000 ships, right? If you don't sail in the area where there's wind, then why put a wind sail, right? If you don't have ports that can offload your captured CO2, why would you put a carbon capture system? So we need to first understand that the ability to scale innovation and the idea that you came up with, right, whether you're hoping to have 60, 80,000 ships or it's a very niche area that you're going to end up doing, then the investor's going to say, okay, what's the real upside on this and how much more money can you make from selling this, right? But I agree with Jitman, you know, basically it's about management of change, right? What's the cost of change? If the cost of change is higher than the benefits you're going to get from implementing innovative solution, then why do the change, right? So you need to be able to demonstrate, and I think this is where the challenge is. I mean, not only just for maritime sector, innovation as a whole across all our pillars of economy, we have this valley of death, right? You have created something really great in the lab, in the room, and it looks really good, and you know, you had one or two pilots, but then you enter this valley of death because now you have to scale this whole thing, and it's a complete completely different value proposition, right? And sometimes we always think about innovation in terms of widgets. The innovation also has to come in from the way we work. When you talk about the maritime sector, we are looking at new fuels, for example. We need to come up with new processes. We need to, that's going to have that kind of impact. So innovation is always just not about widgets, but it's also how we rethink the way we do business, how we rethink the way crew operates on a vessel, how we rethink about safety management systems, how we rethink about the operations of transferring fuel, how we rethink about how we calculate the savings. Today we have noon reports. That has to change. I mean, if you want to just depend on a noon report every now and then to determine whether you're actually making a difference in all your installations, you got a problem, right? So then how do you bring in digitalization to help you get better handle on it? So we have to rethink a lot of things, and that in itself is innovation. It's just not about new widgets, right? Because we need to redefine the way we operate our vessels, and each vessel will have I always say this, each vessel must be like a baby, right? And every baby have the different port of calls, different designs, different loads, cargo it carries, different types of crew. What is it that's going to make sense from a business standpoint? And then you work through those issues. But that's where the problem is the scalability of some of these solutions.
I mean, you slightly contradicted yourself there, because you talked about homogeneous industry, but then you said it's like individual babies.
Heterogeneous.
Heterogeneous.
Yeah. So everyone's different, right?
Oh, okay.
So because they're so different, you really need to you can't just treat your fleet and say, oh, my fleet's going to take this on. And then you realize that, okay, you all go ammonia, but all the routes that you go to, there's no ammonia bunkering, then why did you go to ammonia, right?
Yeah.
So you really need to rethink, the way you deploy innovation as well.
And has that been part of the problem, Frederick? I know you've been involved in looking at the sort of the regulatory landscape, but innovation, is it getting slowed down because we don't know what the regulations are going to come in, and therefore we are slowing down that acceptance of innovation?
I don't think so, actually, because I think even looking at innovation through a technology perspective without considering current and future regulations, there are good business cases to be made. There's no one size fits all, I fully agree. And if you look at the numbers in terms of the 30% uptake, they don't capture all. It only captures the high level, bigger retrofits. So there is actually, I would assume the number is slightly bigger. But even so, and I might sound like a broken record, there is actually a number of technologies, low-hanging fruits, which many ship owners have still not embraced, still not installed. Looked at it holistically instead of one technology, but look at 5, 6 as a combined package, not go crazy when it comes to air lubrication or carbon capture, because it's niche and it has to have a very specific trading profile or a vessel to capture on that. But if we look at that, the low-hanging fruits, a combined effort, there's so much more that we haven't done as an industry. And I think that's the bare minimum in terms of asking for innovation right now. And here we talk about low return on investments, lower capex, easy to execute, basically.
It's also within that, because I get a lot of emails from companies selling Fuel EU maritime compliance reporting, for example. It goes back to, I think, a little bit to what you were saying about it being incremental, but then there's also, a number of companies see this opportunity, and all of a sudden there's a flood of companies that are starting to offer something that's only minoritarily different from each other, and it becomes confusing. So you've got a ship owner that's got 10, 20 emails coming in, all flogging a Fuel EU maritime dashboard or something, and it becomes confusing, doesn't it? So is it a case that we are then, flipping my question round, almost allowing too much innovation, because we're actually allowing, it's a market after all, but too many companies coming in, and then owners become reluctant because they don't know which one's going to survive? I
think it's a natural thing to happen when there's a new market opening up, right? Regulatory reporting and compliance is a new thing. Some owners, many owners, I think, tend to wait until the last minute, and then suddenly, if something pops up in your inbox, like, oh, there's my life savior, I'll ask them to do my compliance reporting. We see the same on wind-assisted propulsion as a system or as as a technology. There are so many different providers out there now. I think we're bound to see consolidation at some point in time, but there's a market for it, and that's why the different technologies are coming up, right?
Yeah, I think we saw the same with the ballast water technology a few years ago.
Yes.
You know, there were the list of approved ballast water systems is huge.
Yes.
And the number of companies still in the market has dramatically dwindled. And
Yes.
let's bring Singapore into this now. How innovative is Singapore? Because you just made a very good case. Your habits have changed. Singaporean habits have changed. You've become very adept at using apps to do almost everything. And we see this investment going on around Singapore. We see what the MPA, we see all of Pier 71, we see all of this investment in digitalization. There must be some sort of mentality in a Singaporean mentality that just says, yeah, digitalization is going to work, and this is why. You've been involved in various companies now at Signal, but can you describe your mental sort of capacity for digital solutions?
I don't know if Singapore specifically is where we should drill into, because Singapore is such an international hub, right?
Yeah.
I've been in a couple of companies and they're on international, but we deal with international crew, captains, chartering people here. And I would say definitely there is a tendency to wait around a little bit and get some real results. They like to hear from the market. Word of mouth is very important when it comes to software. If like a successful ship owning company is using a particular software, it's all relationships. You're trying to figure out, like, can we adopt that? Can we learn from that? So the problem is that when you're talking about innovation, I don't think that there are a lot of Singapore companies that are very, very forward-facing, I guess, except for EPS, because you've got
not just EPS. No.
Yeah, you need some sort of a team to look at, I think, innovation and shipping in a more strategic manner, or else everything's incremental, everything's reactive. A few EU is coming in. I've heard today that pooling in the Pacific is actually more expensive than in Europe, and that's because they waited until this year. So in the Pacific, I think, like, generally we're a bit slower to adopt anything new, just because we want to see how it goes.
Yeah.
But risk adverse.
Jean said something really interesting. She said that the industry has to be a little more strategic about how it's going about innovation. And I don't think that's just true for the shipping industry. I think that's true for the cement industry, the aviation industry, the steel industry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll explain what I mean. Take the fintech industry, massive industry, trillions of dollars, et cetera. Fintech industry has churned out one unicorn company after another. Companies like Stripe worth 90 odd billion dollars, Klarna listing soon at $15 billion valuation, et cetera. No shortage of superstar technology companies that hog the front pages of the New York Times, et cetera, et cetera. But the shipping industry has not been able to do it. But it's not like this is only the shipping industry that's not been able to produce superstar technology companies. The same goes for the cement industry or the steel industry or the aviation industry. A bunch of enterprises or industrial sectors that power our global economy, but kind of function at the back of our imaginations. Right? The core issue really is an insufficiency of talent, of star talent going about solving big problems in our sector. Because fintech or the financial services sector or automobiles is front of mind, young star talent tends to gravitate towards those industries and solve problems in those industries. But less talent gravitates towards industries like steel or cement or shipping to solve problems. And we have to be strategic about it. I think we have to recognize that this is an issue. And just like our brethren from the steel industry or the cement industries, we have to figure out how to be strategic about it, how to attract talent to our industry so as to generate front page of New York Times hogging technologies from the marine sector. I think it's an insufficiency of talent that's at the heart of it.
But there's also one of the issues there, though, because you compared the likes of Klarna and Stripe to what's going on in shipping, but Klarna and Stripe are business to consumer. Much bigger target customer base compared to a business to business in a shipping sector, which has got a large number of ships, but it's still 65,000.
Counterpoint. If you just think about how GDPs are calculated for big countries, for any country, the way GDPs are calculated. So I sell you something, you pay me, and let's say I buy part of that service from Frederick. He's one of my contractors. I pay him. We add it all up. You add up all of that, and that's a GDP of a country, right? The GDP of the marine sector, I'm happy to be contradicted on this, but I'm pretty sure if you run the math, is in excess of $1 trillion. I'm pretty sure of that, reasonably sure of that. Short 4 or 5 hour flight from here is India, which has $1 trillion GDP that attracts $30 billion worth of private equity and venture capital funding every year. The marine sector attracts a fraction of that.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think our industry actually suffers from a lack of size. I think our industry has a lot of size to offer. But I wonder if we have been imaginative enough or strategic enough in terms of coming up with big ideas that will make it to the front page of the New York Times, which would make our conversation redundant.
Yeah. Is that fragmentation that you mentioned a key problem then?
I think in part, I think for the decarb, we are still at the early days of inflection. So let's be really realistic here, right? When you look at the landscape, solution landscape for decarbonization, that means true reduction of GHG emissions, right? You either swap out your fuel, use less fuel, or you take out the CO2 in the fuel, right? It's going to fall in one of these 3 categories. And then you look at the options that you can actually work through on those fronts, right? So I think you need to really think about when you look at innovation, how these things play out in terms of where that impact is going to be, right? But the problem with shipping is there's an interdependency with ports, there's an interdependency with trade routes and trade patterns. You have a war, then you suddenly have to keep changing and shifting, So you did all your calculations on the wind, between the two points, and then suddenly you find out that something has happened and you have to change. So there's all those kind of uncertainties that you need to deal with as well, when you think about shipping. So it's a slightly different animal, and I think for decarb we're still at that stage where we're trying to figure things out, and we need to kind of be brave and have the courage to actually go forth even before we get all the data in front of us. Otherwise, we'll just be a bit too late to get started.
Do you find that just taking that, but also what Sanjay said about that valley of death as well, just flicking that back onto the technology companies, because I know you work with a number of technology companies and sort of matching solutions, but do you find that is a real problem for the technology companies, that if they don't get investment by way of sales of their product, not just investment from private equity or someone like EPS Ventures, that is still a serious problem, that they're there, they've gone to market. That's your point, isn't it? They've gone to market, but the industry is just being so slow.
Yeah, and I think that's actually back to the point you made before. It's a business to business, not a business to customer setup. And there are 2, I would say, main barriers. One is that we operate in a global industry, which is not regulated fully, I would say, globally. We have local and regional regulations that incentivizes in one way and penalizes in another way in different markets, depending on how you trade and where you trade. That presents a skew in the market. And then secondly, there's this whole principle around who benefits and who pays. And we know it from shipping. I think this is an old record as well. There's the owner's charters principle. The owners invest and the charters, they benefit because they pay the fuel. And I think that many technology companies, they maybe overlook or underestimate those 2 challenges when they have a fantastic, innovative technology that is proven, piloted, it works. It can actually make a real difference, especially when it comes to decarbonization. Maybe it's even easy to implement. However, there's a valley of death in terms of, okay, so who's willing to implement? Well, I'm not, because I would pay, but I wouldn't benefit. So if we don't untie that knot, then there's a lot of technologies out here, innovative, ready to go, knocking on the door of shipping, but they're not flushing out to the market because we're not set for scaling those.
Yeah. So there's too much. And that must be a fear for you when you're looking at companies that you're going to invest in as well. It's not just the fact that, as Frederick said, it works, it's proven, it ticks every box, but just the sales just don't come in. And that company is sat on a lot of debt, maybe some of that equity from you, and you're sat there with a company and you're thinking, come on, ship owners, come on, industry, it's up to you to solve this.
So look, finding exceptional technology that's really going to move the needle in the shipping industry is truly difficult because it is more the exception than the norm by a distance. But there is exceptional technology out there. We are seeing stuff. We are investing in things. This industry is not made for 30 exciting investments a year. One can't make like 10, 20 exciting investments every year in this sector. You can't do that. But is it completely bereft of exciting technology, stuff that moves the needle? Absolutely not. But it's rarer compared to other industries. But technologies like that do exist. I mean, I've seen stuff where, you know, if it works out, it could literally flip the industry on its head. It's still a bit early stage. It's 2-3 years out from becoming commercially viable. But if it works, it could literally flip the industry on its head. And we are investing in companies and technologies like that. And when it comes to those technologies, we don't have those fears because it produces, or that company provides, a phenomenal product at the same price as the incumbent or lower. So the customer gets a significantly better value proposition at the same cost, or he gets the same value proposition at a dramatically lower cost. And you offer either of those packages to a customer, they take it. They don't sit on the fence. They don't wait to see if others are using it. They just take it because the value proposition is so strong. So there are exceptions to the norm. And when it comes to those exceptions to the norm, those fears don't exist.
Is it a problem, Gene, in actually getting that message across to actually sell the idea that there is a significant uptick to investing from a ship owner buying? I don't mean investing in the company, but investing in the idea of applying the technology.
The thing is, I think, shipping is so practical, right? You can have the theory that's fantastic. It's going to add more data points. It's going to make your operation so much more interesting and faster and more efficient. But there's a whole legacy of what needs to be delivered in like the incumbent that you've used. So sometimes the new technology is not doesn't have the full coverage of what the incumbent has. And that's one of the things that actually I find new technologies sometimes have, is that they've got the idea, they don't have all the practicalities that's required in a ship owning firm, which needs to submit documents to EU ETS, a few EU Verifavia. But the idea behind, like for example, like a voyage routing company that is collecting more data at sea to improve your forecast, right? Because weather technology has not improved in the last like 10 years. Everyone's using the same data set. So the idea is the incumbent comes in and say that we have more data, we're going to help you be able to route and save time and save costs. But because the technology that they have is focused on the weather part, and there's no real impetus either for them to collaborate with the delivery mechanism of like reports and EOV and stuff like that. So they can't actually fully replace someone who's actually using, an incumbent that does everything, but maybe at like 50 or 60% efficiency, right? Just because it creates more work, or you have to have for a period of time until the new technology keeps up, gets up to speed, is that you're gonna have like two. You're gonna have two technologies in your system for you to get like 100%, 80% on the new tech, and then maybe, but they don't deliver anything that you need for operations.
So it's almost like they're not
missing just a little bit.
Yeah, they're missing. It's not like they a whole suite of solutions that somebody may need, but the technologies that you're seeing are basically
interesting,
doing 4 of the 6 things or whatever. It's not broad enough, not deep enough.
Yes.
To actually answer that. They're too bespoke into one thing. Just a final question then, because we've got to wrap this up, but a final question is, a couple of years ago, it used to be there's an app for that. Now I'm getting emails that tell me there's an AI for that. AI this, AI that. Are we really working into AI in the right way? Are we fully understanding what AI can do? And is every AI really AI, or just a glorified software solution masquerading as AI?
I can start with that. I think so. I definitely think that AI will have a huge role to play in shipping, but in order for us to get there, we need to digitalize what is not digitalized today. So Sanjay, you started talking about noon reports, right? And that's the primarily way of reporting from vessels today. Nonetheless, we have auto-logging, we have sensors, we have high-frequency data transmitters, speed through water, motion sensors, etc. for vessels, but it hasn't been adopted yet for multiple reasons. One of the reasons is that no one really has the incentive of doing it yet. But if that is done, hooked up with proper AI, and I think at some point you'll be able to ask your fleet in the morning saying, so how are we doing? What should we be focusing on today? But in order to get there, you need to be incentivized to invest in digitalization of your vessel. And once we get there, I think we have a huge potential.
What's your thoughts about all these AI solutions? Are you finding it sexy and investing in it?
We haven't invested in an AI-based solution yet, but I think it's very exciting. I mean, if you take all shore staff across tankers, dry bulk, container vessels, and by container vessels, I don't just mean chartering out container vessels, but also the container vessel operators, the likes of Maersk, CMA CGM, etc. When you add up all of their shore-based staff, my sense is it would be a few 100,000 people at least, is my sense. And I think AI, and a lot of those people are engaged in very administrative work that doesn't require a lot of horsepower. And I think AI would be able to add a lot of efficiency to tasks like that. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think AI can make a difference on all kinds of things. So I'm very excited what this technology has in store. And we are meeting companies already. And I'm looking forward to what talent brings to our doorstep with this technology.
Jean, what's your thought?
I think that right now, we're still kind of waiting on to see what AI can deliver. Obviously, everyone's used like ChatGPT, Perplexity, you know. The truth is that a lot of the stuff that it churns out is not really able to weigh how important certain inputs are right now, because that's what shipping does. Shipping collects all these data sets from like WhatsApp, they talk to people, they look at emails, they look at reports, and then they form an opinion. And the thing is, AI doesn't form an opinion. So even if you were to build, for example, a chatbot for shipping, and you go like question like, what's the market going to do tomorrow? What's the market going to do next week? Like, how much are you going to trust that, use that, and actually see a real outcome in the changes? Are you going to run your business because of that? At the higher level, I don't think that is something that AI is ready to do. I mean, even when I try to do any sort of like questioning on the, you know, ChatGPT, I constantly have to keep, I'm not even a prompt engineer. I keep trying to Google what a good prompt, so it's good to find out. And then like, you always go, you know what, I'm not really sure. This is not deep enough. It's not nuanced enough. And shipping is so nuanced. So, you know, from our point of view is that we might use it for the simplification of some very basic stuff. You know, the admin, the reading of emails, but whether or not that's going to impact, I think, like real decision making, I don't think so.
Last word.
Yeah, so we've been looking at this for the last 6 to 8 months. We've been scanning the landscape, and there's this company called SkySail, I think, and they have mapped out and this is maritime-related software providers and AI and things like that. They have like at least 200 over companies across different use cases, achieving different outcomes. And they're all siloed, right? Because they all got their little niche customer base and they're doing work and, you know. But when you look at that and you ask yourself, so, you know, there's like 10 or 15 companies doing the same use case, but they all probably have a different customer base where that whole use case is. So the questions we are asking ourselves, okay, so what's our value add and what do we want to do to bring up more value from this? We do see AI as a possibility when you start lifting yourself beyond the use cases and then look for trends that the use cases are blinkered in because they know that they're just focused on trying to solve this problem, so I'm looking at that. But they're collecting a bunch of data here, and there's another use case collecting a bunch of data here for particular. But is there correlations happening at a higher level that could give you more insights that could actually drive certain kind of decision making? So we've been thinking about, is there something higher up? You know, if you think about all the data the labs are collecting on fuel quality and things like that, they have a purpose and they do analysis on that. And then you ask yourself from a fuel supplier sense, and you look at the correlation between what is happening in the field in terms of issues and things like. Can you actually do a higher correlation between, you know, the component level? Can you predict the new type of fuel or properties of a particular fuel? These are the kind of exciting possibilities AI gives you. But AI, rubbish in, rubbish out, right? So you've got to be very clear in, you know, what is the questions you're asking, what kind of data you're giving it, so you know that the data coming out of this AI is going to be meaningful. Yeah. Otherwise, like you said, a lot of hype, but you know, you can feed anything into the AI and it'll give you anything you want, you know what I mean? So you got to be very careful, I think.
Good. 4 of you, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. We've run out of time, unfortunately, so can we say a big thank you to our 4 panelists here? And now it's an opportunity for me to introduce Jonathan back up onto the stage, I think, isn't it? So Jonathan's now going to take you through this last panel, and he'll introduce your panelists, who are sat down here and mic'd up already. Jonathan, enjoy.
Hello. I was told I wasn't speaking clearly enough in that earlier today, so they've mic'd me up. And I've also been told to be very careful of the time, because certain people are going to be dashing straight from here to the airport. So let me get my stopwatch going here on my phone. And that way we can... Right, so can I invite my panel, please, to come take to the stage? And there we go.
Follow this on. Hello, Kostas. Hi, nice to meet you. Hi, Lars. Hello, yeah, nice to meet you.
So we have, from left to right, we have Lawrence Odfell, who is the chairman of Odfell, the company that runs chemical tankers and makes rather nice wine. We have here Costas de la Portas, known to other conference moderators as Carlos de la Portas.
This is my nickname.
You had to be a capital link yesterday.
Okay.
Who is the president and CEO of Drydell Shipping. We have Jotaro Tamura, who is managing director of MOL Asia Oceania. We have Konstantin Bach, who's CEO of MPC Container Ships and MPC Capital. And last but not least, Eric Hanel, CEO of Stena Bulk. So our last panel is going to look at the ship owner's perspective of the way shipping seems to be navigating its way through a minefield of geopolitical events and other types of madness. And I have to say, the likes of which I have never seen in nearly 3 decades of covering the industry as a journalist. First we had the pandemic, then the Ukraine war, tension in the Middle East, the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, trade war started by Donald Trump, and all of these threaten at a minimum, a major realignment of global trade patterns, especially with regards to the tariffs. But some people are saying could collapse the global economy and make 2008 seem just like child's play. And if that's not enough, environmental regulations the industry has to operate under are getting increasingly stringent, and there's much uncertainty and confusion over the future fuels and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm going to ask the panel, you know, with all that's going on, where are the best routes to profitability in such an unstable commercial landscape? Shall we start like I did the last time from right to left? So, Eric?
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, this is shipping, basically, we can say. But you know, the situation is, of course, as we speak, it's changing every minute, basically, and especially with this trade war that's going on, and how will that affect, well, the tanker industry? It is, I would say, at this moment, it's quite difficult to say, actually. We're talking about this, you know, the Chinese ships going to US and with potential fees and tolls on that, you know, and you know, it's going to be sort itself out, I think. But you know, as a ship owner today, you're basically watching it and you follow the situation and see how it develops. But I mean, as always, you know, it's around creating stability in your fleet and well, hopefully make the right moves in respect of time charters and selling ships, buying ships, and you know, build on current customer base and so on. So I would, at the end of the day, say it is a little bit business as usual.
Okay, so maintaining stable business, stable client base, what's going to get you through. Konstantin, what do you have to say on the matter?
Well, I guess I agree to a lot of that has been said. In addition, I would say do what you can control best, and that is allocation of your capital, how to manage your balance sheet, how to treat your customers, how to possibly collaborate with your customers. I think that is extremely important, and not going all in whilst not standing still. I think that's very important. And what do I mean with this? Firstly, make sure your balance sheet is prepared for whatever lies ahead. And at least our end, we have done that by ensuring we have a high flexibility, low leverage, a lot of ships unencumbered and debt-free in order to be able to adapt to any market environment. And I think that's actually has been, at least on our part, a good advice for the last years, that you need to be able to act and that you need to be able to weather the storm. So do what you have within your control, and that is how's your company positioned, how's your balance sheet positioned, and how do you collaborate with your customers. In our case, that's the charterers. What we have done over the past couple of years, tried to create win-win situations, because, I mean, everyone is in an uncertain environment, so everyone is a bit cautious in taking decisions. We have done more than 20 joint retrofits in exchange for longer charters. So try to find common sense and hedge yourself in a way, but try to do that in a collaborative way with a solid balance sheet. That's at least the way we approach it.
Thank you. Jotaro-san.
Yeah, my response would be quite similar to what's been said. It's I think fundamentally the trade, so the shipping basically serves trade, and people wants to continue to trade because trade will bring prosperity to people. So whatever happens in short term, that could be lived short term, and in the long term, it's the principle. I think it should dictate. So it's rather important not to mix up too much between short-term issues and long-term issues. So for short-term, obviously we have to react to the extent that given the short-term effect, then we have to mitigate the risks. But in the meantime, for long-term, there's a certain perspective where we should be maintaining on a long-term basis. So if you overreact for the short-term issues, then it will distract your long-term interest. So I think it's important to be on a dual mindset. Short-term is short-term, then you do what you have to do. But meantime, long-term, you have to be based on your long-term. That's how I see the moment. Yeah.
Just keep looking to the long future and get there. Okay, Kostas. I mean, I know the last two answering the question here, what's left to say? I suppose we reached that point, but what can you say?
Okay, shipping is getting very, very complicated and very, very difficult. What we do for the last couple of years, we go every day in the morning and we do not know what to expect. We are watching Bloomberg News on a daily, on an hourly basis. We are watching the X to see, in order to determine our next strategy. However, Drydale, we have decided not to trade our ships on the conflict areas, so we try to avoid Black Sea and Red Sea areas, and we trade more with our own ships and with our future cargoes. We are booking cargoes from East Coast South America, from whole trips, grains to China. We do a lot of South Africa back to China. From China, we are loading cargo steels to do backhauls, and Australia around voyages with grains. For Drydale, the priority is the safety of the crew and the vessel. So we believe that it's better to lose some of our profit, but keep our vessel and the crew on a safe mode.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. Lawrence?
My turn. Can you hear me? Great.
Of course.
Well, I can only agree with what the rest of the panel have focused on. And I'm going to sound like a broken record today, but what I'm going to talk about today is efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. And efficiency is going to be competitive in whatever scenario the world throws at you. So that's a basic premise for us. Be efficient. Do your energy saving devices, etc. That's going to make you more competitive.
Thank you. And
Very nice.
the next
Very
question.
practical.
I'm going to start with you, Lawrence, so that you get to say the most. What are the key opportunities and risks in the short to medium term in the industry right now?
Oh, this is a different question. I had them in a different sequence because we are prepared, of course. I was going to answer on the long-term ongoing geopolitical and economic uncertainty. And I wanted to then talk about risk.
Okay, you can answer that question. That is.
Can you ask me that question and I'll...
Okay. How do ship owners plan for the long term amidst ongoing geopolitical and economic uncertainty?
Don't throw curveballs at me at this time.
I'm waking everyone up. It's
Yeah,
late
that's
in
good.
the afternoon.
Good. Look, I'm going to use an example. We do risk management, of course, and 4 or 5 years ago, we saw the increasing risk that there would be some kind of conflict between the U.S. and China on trade. And we said, okay, what does that mean for our ships, our balance sheet? And we had, at that point, a lot of Chinese leases. And a Chinese lease, by definition, is a Chinese asset. So we were concerned that if there were to be sanctions on Chinese assets, our ships would be affected. So we worked a systematic plan to how to, when opportunity let us, buy back these ships from Chinese leases. And now, so we had 12 ships on Chinese leases, and now, first quarter this year, 0. It took some time, of course. We had to do it in an opportune manner. We had to balance it with a balance sheet. But if you are attentive to the risks out there, you can prepare for them. You can prepare for scenarios. And that's how we also will work forward on the Chinese port fees issues, etc. So that's one example of how to manage. Think in scenarios.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go on the second question, for the long. Okay, it was the third question or?
What?
Okay, let's go for the second question. Okay.
It's
Which
his long-term view.
Of course.
Now we get your long-term view.
Okay.
Well, actually, short to medium-term view.
So look,
Sorry.
okay.
So
For the
what
long term, what the
no, we
owners
were
are doing
looking-
for the long term for the unstability. or-
that's coming next. I
Okay.
really got you all confused. Okay.
Sorry!
Sorry, we
The question,
okay.
Kostas, is how do ship owners plan for the long term amid ongoing political and economic uncertainty? So
Okay, for the long term, what we are doing also here, and most of the ship owners in Greece, or what Drydale is doing, that we try to locate and to fix our ships on a longer period. on a very reputable name, let's say more than 1-2 years, in order to safeguard our cash flow and in order to make our break even on the vessel. So it's a very important to have a long period vessel with a reputable name in order to keep flowing and to have your cash flow and good balance sheet. One other way that some owners are doing is they are start selling the old ships. I see a lot of Chinese ships, Chinese owners are buying ships, so the owners, they prefer to sell the old units to Chinese, and when the market clears, they will be ready to reinvest the money to buy more ships and better, more modern fleet. So there's two ways, to longer period and to sell one of your oldest units in the market, as now there's a huge demand from Chinese buying second-hand ships.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, you like more? I'm okay.
I've got more questions. You
Of course, okay.
carry on. Jotaro-san?
Yeah, so I think it's balanced in the end. So if you look back, let's say, last 20, 30 years, in the world trade, literally, in the beginning, there wasn't really China. But after 30 years, yeah, their presence is enormous. But again, it's not forever. It keeps changing, and then, if you're too dependent on certain things, then that's a risk that we should be recognizing too. So which cargo sources or which cargo destinations or where you build the ships or where you take resources of the crew and so all these elements, yes, we all know that shipping is a combination of the good resources and assets. Then, but if you're on one side too much, then you effectively take a risk. And so long-term view, the worlds keep changing and you will have to keep the balance. So that's probably what we can think of for the long term, yeah, I would say. Yeah.
Well, obviously your company's been around for a very long time, so I think it's obviously worked having a long-term view. How many years has MOL been in business now?
Yeah, this is 141, first year.
Oh, amazing.
Since the beginning, which was the opening of the country itself.
Yes,
you know,
it's a very historic company. Christian.
Konstantin.
Constantine.
No worries.
Hey, look, it's been 3 days of conferences non-stop.
So it doesn't happen on to me. Yesterday.
So Carlos and Constantine.
Could be something next.
So I will just continue with the same question, or?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Just to make sure that, you know, I know what to answer. No, I think in a lot has been said. I personally think that it's important to have a diversified base, and that means in terms of having a certain size. In my view, it's important as a ship owner to be able to breathe in different market phases, to sell. We, for example, have sold in the container market, although it's being set of being in a very challenging constellation, it's actually pretty good at the moment. So we have sold 8 ships this year already. Oh. So to use the time to also reallocate your capital. And at the moment, at least, you know, we reallocate the capital to increasing investment capacity to make sure you are able to deploy again when the time is right. In the end, I'm a tonnage provider, so we are steel owners. So for us, it's about allocating the capital at the right point in time and being able to invest when the time is right, and also take some chips off the table when you can, because markets open and close, that we all know in shipping. And lastly, quoting Lawrence here, efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. Invest in your own ships, because that's what you can do. You have better assets. You know where to deploy the capital, and that is what we have done. And I think that gives it a mid to long-term perspective.
Thank you. And finally.
Yes, what is left to say? It's a good question, but a lot has been said. But I refer back to the previous panel about innovation, and then I come back to what Lawrence just mentioned as answer to his first question. That is what you just mentioned as well. So you just stole my phrase here. But efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. And what are you doing with that long term? Yes, I strongly believe a lot in AI and what we can do with that, and with all the signals that is out there that we are not using today, technology that is on its way to be built up, and in that respect, of course, business as usual, the traditional shipping business, but with this, I would call it, let's call it new technology then, for time being. I think that is what's going to change a lot in the shipping market, and especially efficiency, both on the technical side, but also on the commercial operational side.
Thank you. Now, this question, Konstantin's going to be exempt for answering it because he just answered it earlier. But in terms of the investment climate, is the current investment climate favorable for fleet expansion, or should owners proceed with caution? Konstantin, do you have anything more to add to that?
Well, I think expansion can mean a lot, right? Does that mean unlimited growth? I would be a bit more cautious. Does it mean you invest into your fleet and get better assets and optimize the fleet? I think the time is now, because you have a lot of options to improve the efficiency of your ships. You have options to team up, to collaborate, especially in the container space. Charterers and owners collaborate way more than they used to, way more, and that is a bit forced through regulation, but also in order to create win-win situations. So I think in terms of expansion with a good asset base, yes, invest in your own fleet, sell and buy, but not unlimited growth. I think that is something I would be at least more cautious at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Eric.
It was me? Yeah, okay. I have to say I agree here. And, you know, I mean, look at the shipbuilding prices and so on. Of course, I would not go out and speculate today. But of course, if you have a long-term contract, absolutely, that's a different story. And then, of course, you have to do certain investments just to be relevant, and when it comes to regulations and so on, and that's of course something you do, but that's usually not major investments as such. So be patient, I think, is the name of the game right now.
Okay, Lawrence.
It's same. Trade wars will lead to less trade, less economic growth, which means there'll be less need for ships. So it's better than to invest in your own ships, make them more efficient, okay, and that add to the supply problem. So it's basically, I'm saying the same as the rest of the panel.
Costas,
okay.
You have a very modern fleet, so
I have a modern fleet, but
invest in.
Yes, we have invested a lot in Japanese ships, new building ships. We're expecting 11 new buildings to come for the next 3 years. However, what I will recommend now in order to overcome the new trade wars is to have a wait-and-see approach. However, disruption always is good for the future shipping. When we see, personally I believe, when we see a ceasefire, a peace treaty comes between Russia and Ukraine, there will be a big boost in the market, on the dry sector, especially on the gear tonnage. Ukraine definitely will ask a lot of commodities, which they have a big, let's say, small ports. There will be a lot of need of gear tonnage going back to Ukraine to rebuild all the country. Therefore, I believe that the owners will keep an eye on the vessels. The things will change to a better market, and to have an open eye when they see the market change, the owners to invest and buy gear tonnage on the dry sector. It will be huge demand, which is coming.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you. So all the brokers in the room who've got gear tonnage, you know who to contact. I'm going to change up the question order here, just to give you some advance warning, because time is ticking here, and I don't want to delay people's drinks. I got you out at lunch on time, and I want to get you out for the drinks afterwards on time. So I'm going to go to ask a few individual questions of people. So let's start with Eric.
Sure.
Dana is very active in the US markets, and you in fact have several US flag tankers, as the world knows right now, although these were built in China. Given the Trump administration's threats against companies with Chinese-built ships and its plans to push shipbuilding in the US, would you also consider building vessels in the US? And if so, what would need to happen to make you do so?
Yeah, it's a delicate question. I mean, if the opportunity is there to build it, and you have a business opportunity, the answer is yes. But I think what we experience in US and in Europe as well, actually, is who's going to build the ships, and it's going to take a long time before I see that can happen. At least, I mean, the industrial shipping in both Europe and US is, I would call it basically zero when it comes to building. So first of all, you have to build up the knowledge, and secondly, we have to find the shipyards that can do it. Yeah, there are some production in US today, but it's very limited, and it takes a long time to build the ships, and it becomes very expensive. So to get the business done and get some kind of return on the money on that, I think it's going to be very tough, at least for as it looks like right now. But I mean, early today it was referred back to the Liberty ships, where I think they said they put them together in was it 5-6 days or something like that, and
not great ships.
Which was, can that happen again if this is a real push for it? Probably not that, but it's of course if you make things relevant in the US to build ships and to be competitive. But I think it's a scenario I cannot see is happening, actually.
Well, I seem to recall from the history books that quite a few of those Liberty ships were flung together so quickly that they fell apart on their maiden voyages.
We had 2 of them.
Yeah. Okay, Jotaro-san, longevity seems to be a major part of Japanese shipping. The industry is dominated by large conglomerates such as MOL, and with long histories such as 140 odd years. And there are also some very large family-owned companies that have been around for almost as long. So it's a 2-part question. What is the secret to the longevity of Japanese ship owners? And given such a large shipping industry in Japan, why don't we really see younger generations of Japanese entrepreneurs starting innovative new shipping companies?
Right. It's an interesting question. I was given this, then I have to think through. I think that although the history stands like 140 years for us and some others as well, it's not that the same people on same mindset and same way of doing business has been there for over 100 years. It's constant changes, and I think in the end, what makes difference is the capability to change yourself. Yeah, because if you can change or adapt to the environments, then you will definitely survive. And perhaps that was the case. So the companies like us, it's not really family-owned. So it's more stock listed and keeps changing, and the new people keep coming. So you might not find the new people establishing new companies, but the style that has been there for is that the company is there, they keep changing, and the new people's coming. So those who want to challenge shipping, they join MOL, K-Line, NYK, and all others. So sorry, that's the way I can explain it to it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then who should we pick here? Lawrence. Odfjell has invested heavily in energy efficiency, as you have made very clear throughout this panel. It's about a decade since you've been doing it, and you've mentioned that your AER is now at a 53% reduction against your 2008 benchmark. Will you be willing to continue such investments given the geopolitical uncertainty and a US government that appears less concerned about climate risk? And has the previous investments been worth the money?
I'll answer the last part of the question first. It's the best business we've ever done. We've invested tens of millions of dollars on energy saving devices, on average getting a payback of less than 2 years. So nothing else beats this. This is good business for the environment, it's good business for us. And more owners or shareholders of owners should be demanding this of their ship owners or ship operators, because if you don't invest in energy efficiency, you're basically burning money unnecessarily. So that's the first part. But to answer the second part, I'd like to tell a little case story. And this is a story of a Chinese-built ship, Bo Olympus, recently built, currently the world's most fuel-efficient super segregator. And she set sail a week ago from Antwerp. It's the first ship in 110 years. We're young. In 110 years, it's our first sail ship. We set it will sail with suction sails from Bound for Blue, installed over 2 days in Antwerp, and she set a sail across the Atlantic, heading ironically to the United States. We are monitoring real-time fuel consumption. Prior to making this investment decision, we had simulated the ship back and forth of the Atlantic and the Pacific for 10 years, and the average estimated fuel saving is 10%. That doesn't sound like a lot if we're going to reach zero, but I'm coming to that. So in Antwerp, we also bunkered the ship with B100 with the intention to sail her back from the US with 100% renewable, certified renewable fuel as a proof of concept. And to our knowledge, this will be the first tanker to sail across the Atlantic with this combination to be a truly net zero voyage. And it's happening now in 2025, not in 2050. So we are 25 years ahead of the curve. Of course, this fuel is costing a little bit more, but compared to the Chinese port fees against the Chinese ships, this is negligible. And actually, since we're much more fuel efficient than our competitors, the delta is not that big either for our customers. So, with the validation of these suction sails, we are ready to invest and increase our ambition level, not only to retrofit more ships, we've already prepared the next sister ship, but we are also ready to build new builds. We have lined up yards for this, Jan Wardy we're talking to, and if we can make this happen, our next chemical tanker will be 40% more fuel efficient than the current most fuel efficient ship on the water. So we're going to keep investing in efficiency. And can I just say one thing more, as just to make a little bit marketing here? Today, I came into the room here, we got news that Time magazine has, for the first time, made their so-called annual green tech, what is this called? 1 second, because this is breaking news. The world's top green tech companies of 2025. There's one shipping company on that list, Odfjell. It's worth doing this, and we're going to get recognition, and we're going to get support from our banks and our customers for doing this. Sorry. And therefore, we can continue investing.
Good, thank you. I think you're probably beating Donald Trump. He wanted to be on the front page of Time once and was complaining about that. Kostas, I'm going to ask you this. I know you have to leave, so if you need to step off the stage and go after you've answered it, that's fine.
20 minutes. Okay.
You recently said at another venue that if you were the CEO of the global shipping fleet, actually it was the TradeWinds year-end article, you would take a practical short-term approach by eliminating vessels of older than 20 years. I mean, that's easy for you to say, given the average age of the dry Dow fleet is about 1 year. So with all the uncertainty over future fuels, what advice would you give your peers whose average fleet age is more around the 20-year age mark? Should they build now? Should they wait? Or should they just scrap and go out of business?
Okay, what I have been saying is that we need is a time to phase out ships which are above 25 years old. It's unacceptable to see ships trading built 97, 96, built and they still exist. One way that we can do is that Ajax Classification Society should stop accepting ships which are above 25 years old. I find it a bit ironic. For the last 5 to 7 years, we have been saying a lot. We have a lot of pressure to invest on a dual fuel engines, and on the other hand, we keep trading 25 years old vessels. Let's say what it will happen when we go to a port and there's a dual fuel engine, new building vessel, and a vessel overage which is above 25 years old. This overage vessel will have 3 and 4 times more CO2 emission. This will help the planet? I don't think so. Therefore, the current stand of the old tonnage, which is above 25 years on the dry sector, is about 8 to 9%, which this starts above 1,000 ships. So if we convince the owners which they have old tonnage to go for scrap, all these old tonnage, it will improve the market, will reduce the supply of tonnage, and it will be better for the environment. Until now, nobody has said about slow steaming, which is very important in order to reduce the CO2 emission. What I will say, and I would like to say something that we just took delivery of 4 Namura, Handymax, the new design of Handymax of Namura, and we are mixing with my people the speed with the consumption. The speed is 12, and the consumption is 12 to 11 metric tons per day, which is amazing consumption of conventional fuel. So what I will say to these owners is that they have to go immediately for scrapping this type of old ships, which are above 25 years old, in order to get better price on scrapping. As everybody sees, the scrapping prices is coming down. With the new Hong Kong convention, which is coming this summer, the scrap prices will be reduced even further, so they have to go now to take more money for the old tonnage. In addition to, if they still continue trading this old tonnage, it will be very difficult with the new regulations which are coming. Therefore, for the good of the market and the good of the planet, we have to convince these owners to go for scrapping immediately and reinvest the amount of money on a new ships right now.
Okay, thank you.
I think everybody will understand and agree.
All our scrap industry
I would not agree,
friends will
because I
be
think that's
cheering.
segment dependent. I think that's very segment dependent, and it's going to depend on the different ships and where they're built and how they're maintained. So I would say you're right if the ship is a gas guzzler, but there are ways also to impact existing ships so they will not damage the planet as much.
Yes, but Lawrence, I was talking about dry bulk. We see a lot of dry bulk. We see Panamax 74,000 deadweight, built 95, 96. It's still trending. We are above 25 years old. We have on the dry market, we have very bad market due to as we're having a lot of ships. So if we don't convince these owners to go to make a scrapping of the vessels, then what we do? The market will remain on a very low side. Dry market is completely different from all the other markets we have. I'm talking about dry market. We have a lot of ships. We need to convince the owners to go immediately for scrapping.
So put the bangers in the breakers.
To put the bargain in the brakes, yes. And there's a lot of issue with the dual fuel engines, all this new technology. You know, I find it a bit amazing. Keep trading these old ships and how the classification society accepting to continue above 25 years old to give papers.
Thank you. And finally, Konstantin. MPC has been through a phenomenal growth phase in recent years, especially on the container ship side. And that coincided perfectly with the container boom. So now that the liner markets have tapered off somewhat, can we expect to see the same level of growth? And if not in containers, where could we possibly see growth opportunities for the company going forward?
Yeah, indeed, we have grown quite substantially over the last years. We have, over the last 8 years, bought more than 100 ships, but we've also sold 40, and the vast majority of those ships we bought in 2017 and 18. So I would not 100% agree that it coincided with the market boom. Actually, when the market started to boom, I would say we have used the perfect storm to do 3 things. Firstly, recapitalize the balance sheet in a way that we now have 2/3 of the vessels debt-free, unencumbered, have full control over the balance sheet. Secondly, we have paid almost 1 billion in dividends over the last 3 years. And thirdly, and very importantly, we have invested a lot in the ships. I mean, in 2020, 2021, we had 100% conventional ships, and we now have 50% of our fleet is either eco-tonnage, new buildings with dual fuel, or significantly retrofitted ships. So we have tried to, balance the fleet. I think there has been a very strict or very clear growth path in the beginning. If you have a certain size, and we have that size now, it's really more about optimizing the fleet. So I would say growth is not everything. Having a profitable, functioning business is very important, and having good vessels for our customers. So in terms of opportunities, I still see quite a few opportunities in the container market, actually. Although, if you look at all the graphs of all the analysts, container is always, on the high end and just about to fall off the cliff. Has been the case the last 5 to 10 years. So I'm not that sure. There is a risk of overcapacity, yes, but there are still very interesting opportunities to team up with your charterers, do investments, maybe even new builds, but certainly invest into the existing fleet. And there I see opportunities. Secondly, as far as MPC Capital is concerned, we have also invested in the offshore offshore wind service vessel space, because we see that as a structural growth market. Maybe not in the US at this stage, but certainly in Europe. And we believe a structural growth market is definitely interesting, and that will continue to grow. And that's where we would, not out of MPC Container Ships, but as MPC Capital, clearly see further growth potential.
So have you actually made concrete investments in offshore?
Yes, we've ordered 3 firm and 3 option vessels, OSSVs, smaller vessels. It's a new sub-segment, I would say, in the offshore survey and service vessel segment, dedicated to the European market.
Okay, thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, technology has let us down in that the pad that's got the digital questions has died. Does anybody have any questions? Please raise your hand. Does someone have a microphone? We have Elaine, you over there, who's waving with great vigorousness. She would like to get a question in.
Thank you, Jonathan.
But can I, before you ask your question, Kostas, do you need to go?
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
Okay, I can stay for 20 minutes more.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, panelists. It's a wonderful discussion. I'm Elaine from South 82, as an Australian mining company. Actually, the forum today is called Shipowners Forum. We know actually a lot of players in the market. They call themselves ship owners or disponent owners, but actually they are vessel operators. So my question would be more relevant to them. Like for ship owners, now we see the economy is getting gloomy. We can sell assets, but these vessel operators, they have no assets to sell. But with the more complicated marketing conditions, do you have any advice to these companies to how to survive or maintain the profitability? Because in case these vessel operators, let's say 20% of them go bust, it eventually will affect the profitability of the head owners, because they are the main takers of the period vessels from you. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you. Would anyone like to answer the question?
I guess it's not that relevant for containers, so I'm happy to pass it on to someone else.
Yeah.
Kostas, you're in dry bulk.
Of course. So, okay, your question is about light asset companies, what they will do in order to safeguard all the assets if they don't own ships. So what I will recommend them is to fix on the long-term cargoes, to fix business which they are very sustainable in the market, to keep going the cargoes coming from grains cargo, which is very popular cargo, to focus mainly on routes which is very profitability routes between South America, from whole trips to China, and they always need to be next to the ship owners as operators to stay together, to have excellent relationship, because the things are quite difficult, and we need very good cooperation. So I think the owners and the charters, they have to be like a partners on this position. And sometimes what we see lately in the dry market, some operators, they do JV. So it's one way in order not to have full exposure of the vessel. They're sitting with a good relationship on owners, which they have done for the last 5 years, and they are making JV project. So instead of keeping the vessel 100%, they keep 50%, and they keep the operating and the chartering side of the vessel. So it's a way that they can keep having the vessel, but to have 50% of exposure. And we see a lot of, for the last couple of years, charters with the owners are coming closely together by JV projects.
So did anyone else submit a question that they would like to have answered? Because I think we got time for one more question in the back over there.
A question to Lawrence. Hi, Lawrence.
Hey.
Hi.
Good presentation. And in terms of your risk management strategies in ship owning, how do you use void-fill wines to balance that out?
Well, in our group, it's the only loss-making business, so help us. No, this is a little bit of a flippant question in a way in this context of this, but I take the opportunity to say that this, in our risk map of woodfill, for many years now, the direct and indirect effects of climate change has been very high up. We follow, the different risk agencies and how they rate things, and the Economic Forum, etc. And so the high risk around climate has been up there for a long time. As Norwegians, we love nature, clean air, clean waters. So actually, our winery too follows the same philosophy. We are trying to make a positive impact where we can, or make as little impact as we can. So our farming is biodynamic. We heal the soil where we farm. So just like we're trying to make well with putting suction sails on our ships, putting certified biofuel on B100 on this voyage, we are spending the net difference against very low sulfur fuel on the fuel itself on this voyage is going to be about 50% more expensive. You're probably expecting a lot more, right? But this is only 50% more expensive, and so that means for the voyage cost, which 50% of your cost is fuel, only 25% more expensive to be a net zero voyage. So this is within grasp. This is reachable. Yes, we are using refried. They use cocoa oil from McDonald's to power a ship or whatever it is that goes into this. But the point is, in recent years, we have heard all this talk about green fuels, methanol, ethanol, as the only pathway to zero. This ship, Olympus, is showing there are other pathways to zero that don't require a tremendous amount of electricity. And DNV came out with a report saying, you got me going on the wine, so cheers to that. But DNV came out with a report showing that biofuels is an option. By 2050, they estimate that the world will be producing between 60 to 100 exajoule of biofuel. 60 to 100 exajoule. The global shipping fleet needs 12 exajoule, so 12%. That sounds like too much because there's going to be competition around this, right? No. And by the way, this is fuel that is not going, this is biofuel that is not competing with feed or food. This is waste, let's say. or circular use. So today, biofuel, 99% of biofuel is being used for transportation, land transportation. As we electrify ashore vehicles, which makes a hell of a lot more sense than than in the ocean, we believe firmly there's a case for biofuels. And then we can forget a lot of this talk about ammonia, where we have to do all kinds of regulatory, expensive infrastructure in port. And a 25-year-old ship can burn B100, okay? It's going to cost them a lot of money, but they can. Anyway, so thank you for the question of wine. I wish we were serving it here today. Are we serving my wine? No?
Oh, we are serving wine, and I'm sure they're getting eager to get some.
Not my wine.
I'm going to wrap up the panel here, and I'm just going to invite Craig Eason back on to give us our farewell. If the panelists could move a little bit down that direction so we can get the farewell photo.
We're done? Okay.
Yep, we're done. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Kostas. Good to see you again.
Well, thank you very much, Jonathan, and to all the panelists, and thank you very much to all of you. Just to remind you, I let them finished? Just remind you, 5th floor we have got some wine. No, it's not yours. Sorry. But also today, we had 27 speakers here giving you insights and thoughts. We had 5 panels. We had 3 keynote speeches, all moderated by 2 TradeWinds journalists, all in one day. And 100, 200 of you here watching, listening, and being engaged with us. So please, thank yourselves for being here. I thank you. And can I thank also our conference team as well, who put these events together, because we do quite a lot of these events and they never get enough thanks. Thank you to them. Hashtag TradeWinds events. And put that to your photos, yeah? Yes.
Okay, just a warning for the 5th floor. The venue is on little pods on top of a pond. Please be careful when you're on these pods, because I've been to parties there where both the wait staff and the guests have fallen in the water. And so just be careful. Don't step backwards before looking.
And if you do, take a photograph, hashtag TradeWinds events.